they use the term food desert for my community, but I would say it's a food swamp. There's a lot of things to eat, not a lot of it is very good, however. The USDA in its own food desert report also said that we've got to start thinking more innovatively about how we address food security, right? There's this tendency to pathologize the things that happen in poor communities of color, with folks not eating together. I was bused to school, mainly white friends, affluent, live on the Upper West Side, they didn't eat together either. And there were no public service announcements to talk to them about that. What the USDA then said, and which I agreed with, was where we really started to think about how we were going to create better food choices in our community so people could get healthy, but then also make sure that they're making money off of it. Because I don't want to advocate for Trader Joe's to come into my community. I don't want to advocate for Whole Foods or Whole Paychecks to come into my community. Because that means that gentrification is probably right on the heels of that. I was gentrified out of Harlem. I saw that whole process happen. And it doesn't happen overnight. It probably happened started to happen when I was about 10, when they started rezoning things. And by the time that I was 21, the community around me had changed and there wasn't a place for me or my family in it. So what we need is to make sure that we have access to the resources that are going to give people in the community to be able to use the knowledge that they already have, right? There's this misconception that we need to be educated. No, it's probably already part of our ancestral DNA. Maybe a reminder or a refresher course, or maybe just access to the actual resources. I live in a primarily Latin community. Many of these people have come from Mexico, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, with access of all these things that they did in their home country that they no longer now have access to in this country. One of the biggest ones probably being land. We've been trying for 2 years with the help of the city councilwoman to start an urban farm. Right? And I don't say community garden, I say urban farm. We want to raise chickens, keep bees, grow food, create added value products, create cooperatives that will then be responsible for that, and then sell those things, both low end and high end. It's been 2 years and we have not been able to do that. Although I live in a community that has a 49% land vacancy rate. It's not that the land is not there. It's that the municipal government says you can't have access to it. And so it is those types of things that create a sort of apathy or anger or resentment and are challenges to folks like us in terms of organizing our community. And so what has to happen is that I don't consider myself a leader. I consider myself a catalyst or a contagion. I walk into a room and I get amped and people say, here comes the crazy hippie lady. And I start talking about food and vegetables. And then I tap into what those folks need and allow them to be at the forefront of that. And so the reality is that I'm saying that when we do this work, we've got to understand that it's multi-tiered, that it's complex, that it just doesn't come from a farmer's market, it just doesn't come from an urban farm, but it makes sure that we create collectives and coalitions that have equity, that include, and there's a difference between diversity and inclusion, that's another conversation, but that these coalitions are inclusive, meaning that the people in the community who are most affected are at the forefront of the decision-making process and the strategies to remedy these issues.